All right, good morning and welcome. Today is Wednesday, January 20th, and this is the Lextran Board of Directors Finance Committee meeting. Due to the COVID-19 state of emergency and Governor Beshear's executive orders regarding social distancing, this meeting is being held via live video teleconference pursuant to Senate 150, Attorney General Opinion 20-05, and in accordance with KRS 61.826 because it is not feasible to offer a primary physical location for the meeting. I'm Jill Barnett, Lextran's General Manager, and with that, I will turn it over to the Chairman of the Finance Committee, Mr. George Ward.
Good morning, everyone. Today is going to be a pretty good meeting, and we'll have a conversation talking about the great opportunity that we have to strengthen Lextran's financial future. And so the first order of business is approval of the September 30th, 2020 minutes. I have one question on this, and it's just in the call to order paragraph where it says this meeting of the Lextran Board of Directors. Should that mention the Finance Committee?
In the minutes?
The minutes from September.
In the COVID-19 statement, I see what you mean.
Yes.
Yes, we can make that correction or addition.
Yeah, I just saw it, or else I would have brought it to your attention sooner.
Good catch, George.
Anyway, with that change, entertain a motion to accept the minutes.
Motion to accept the minutes.
Jamie? Rick, you there? If not, I guess I will second it. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. All right, so the next item on the agenda is a Canopy project update. And Jill, this is going to be on the board's agenda too?
We can discuss this at the board too. Fred can help us do that just for the benefit of the full board. We have kicked off the Canopy project as of late last week. And as you will remember, this is a project that will be funded through a grant from FTA. And it is to work in conjunction with some of our electric bus projects here at the facility. So this is something that would be built on site at our Loudon Avenue facility. And I'm going to let Fred give you a little bit more of the details. He has been involved since that grant was written and can give you a little bit more of the details on that project. Mr. Combs, are you ready?
I am. Alan, can you swap over to the PowerPoint, please? And this is a fairly quick update. Okay, so make sure I've got control of the screen. Now we start with our mission statement as we always do. We serve people in our community with mobility solutions. And then just really quick on the Canopy. This was a low and no emissions grant award from fiscal year 2018 for $2.29 million. We were awarded toll credits to satisfy our local match requirements, so this is 100% federally funded. The Canopy is going to provide cover for the fleet and the infrastructure for electric charging stations. It was written to include some green elements. We don't have specifics on what those are going to be yet, but something such as solar panels, rainwater collection, it could be a green roof. We're exploring those options now. And as Jill said, we've kicked off the sort of schematic design. Once we work through that process and narrow things down a little bit better, we'll be able to come back with the full set of construction plans and take it out to bid. So no, there's not a whole lot of detail at this point in time, but that's kind of the project in a nutshell and in general, and I'm happy to answer any questions that you might have about it.
What's the timeline on it?
The schematic design is going to take a little bit of time to work through. We got to make sure that the infrastructure, the back end infrastructure we're putting in is compatible with the different possibilities of charging equipment. So we're looking through those sorts of things now. I would think we're probably several months away from having the RFP on the street. So this is not going to be, I mean, we're probably talking summer before we have anything actually on the street, to bid on.
And what is a canopy? Is it a tarp? Is it a fixed roof? Is it what?
It'll be a fixed roof. And again, some of these green elements might change what it would look like. For example, if it did have a green roof, there could be plants and other things on top, or a rainwater collection system might make it look a little bit different. But it'll be partially enclosed. I don't think there's going to be any walls or anything like that. So it might be like a cantilever across from the light poles that we already have. But those are the sort of questions that we work through the schematic design to sort of figure those boundaries out.
Yeah, we've had a little experience with green roofs, and they're very heavy.
Mm-hmm.
So it creates a design challenge. So be aware of that when you start talking about it and ask those kinds of questions.
When this grant was written, it was really really high level concept, if you will. And so I think that's kind of why some of the questions, such as what it might look like and what the particular green elements will be, are yet to be answered. Fred and Alan, I'm hearing a lot of feedback. I don't know if you are as well.
I am. But we are checking into it.
Am I the one giving feedback?
Certainly, if you would like.
Oh, no.
Oh,
It was,
Yeah, it looks like it.
okay. I don't know what to do, if I should.
If you can just mute your mic and unmute it when you're not speaking, or mute it when you're not speaking, that will help with it.
Yes, I will continue that. So I have a question if you all can hear me.
Yes.
So remind me how many electric fleet we have?
We have 6 at the moment, and then there are an additional 2 from Gillig that should be arriving within, what is it, Jill, a couple months from now?
They should start production in April.
Production in April. Okay.
The buses that are the build that's taking place now is CNG.
And then, so 8 of the 60-ish, there's about 60 in the fleet, is that right?
I think we were up to 72, and then some of the cutaways would be put into contingency fleet. So we're at 67. Is that what it is?
I think the number is 65 that is active, that was active in use on the street the other one day last week when Chris and I talked. And the reason that had that of active on the street, at least 2 of those were down for major repair work at a vendor, and some of the others were in contingency.
And is the canopy going to cover 8, like when you guys are doing the dimensions, or is it projecting that we will have more electric fleet in the future?
We want to design it so it can cover more. Perfect world, we've got enough to cover everything, but we have to see kind of how the budget works out and what we can get done with the design. So again, that's another one of those questions that we're approaching from all angles. We do definitely want to make sure we've got capacity to expand the fleet should that be the direction that we go for the electric fleet, but to protect as many buses as we can protect.
okay. So it's accurate to say that the canopy will be designed to cover as much of the fleet as possible within the budget.
Yes.
Okay. Jamie, you have any other questions on this?
Nope.
Rick, can you talk? Maybe not. We had, and my memory is a little cloudy on this, but one of my first meetings at Lextran, there was a proposal to build a canopy. And it seems to me we're looking at $500,000, $600,000, something like that, if I remember right. And at the time, it was questionable if we would have that much money left in the in the project. So, we made the decision not to do it. Although it's highly recommended that you have that if you have electric buses. So it's great that we were able to get this grant and be able to do this several years later.
That is correct. In that this was an item that was discussed in the original design for this facility. However, due to some unknowns of the financing, it was something we held on to for a later date.
Okay.
So good memory.
All right, Nikki, do you want to go through the financials?
Sure, my computer's lagging this morning.
Yeah.
Okay, I think I have it now. Okay, the balance sheet, you'll notice our property tax money came in December, and we received about $14 million. We received another $2 million last week. So we're right about normal right now for this time of the year. We have our accounts payable courses, grant money, and everything else looks pretty much similar to last year, and nothing stands out to me unless anyone has any questions. Okay, I'll go on to the.
Let me.
I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Yep, I was gonna say, do you get any additional property tax money, or is this the final check for the property tax?
This is the bulk of it, but we will have smaller amounts coming in through. We usually get pretty good size in February, and then we'll have smaller amounts March, April, and May.
And then what you probably didn't get this insight when they gave it to you, you said it's right on track what we had budgeted. And I know we had talked about this committee having David O'Neill in the future to talk about what they're trending for next year. Insight when you got that funding?
No, we didn't get any information that we don't normally get, but with what we received last week and then what we received through December, we're actually a little bit ahead of where we were this time last year. So I expect it to be pretty normal. I think this year will probably be pretty normal. Next year may be the one that's more affected, but we haven't seen anything yet to determine that. We do have a little bit of passenger revenue. Some of the colleges have started buying some class passes for students. We do have some from Fayette County schools preparing for bus passes for the future. They had some money they needed to spend. Federal funds are higher than usual. That's due to the CARES money. We did get an additional $5 million. It's called the CRISA instead of CARES. It's about the same thing. It's 5.2 million, and it's for operating, payroll expenses, things like that. There are no capital items for that grant. It's designed to help cover basically payroll costs and operating costs.
What's the acronym for it?
It's CRISA. It is. Let me find my paper here.
ERSSA, I believe.
Coronavirus Response and Relief Supplemental Appropriations Act. And it's CRRSAA. And they called it CRISA on the FTA webinar.
Okay.
Is that 5.4 million a combination of CARES and CRISA?
No, this is actually this 5.4 is actually what we've drawn down on the CARES money.
So
still,
is CRISA not in here then?
no, it's showing on the cash flow sheet, but it's not showing on the balance on the statement of revenues. Because we won't draw it down for several months because we'll draw the rest of CARES probably in February, and then we'll move on to the other money.
How much of CARES is left then to draw down?
We've got, let's see, I think we've got like almost $5 million left to draw down. So we should draw.
And when we get to the cash projection, that's all included then, all the
Yes.
CARES and all the.
Uh-huh. Yep. All of our expenses are doing well at this point. We obviously have been over some in materials and supplies due to some of the PPE, which is actually reimbursed to us, and some of our seasonal purchases such as filters, things like that. So that'll even itself out. But I'm very pleased with the expenses at this point. So
Likewise.
okay, this is the cash flow that I put together. I added in about the middle of the page, the operating activities. You'll see the property taxes where we budgeted $19 million. And the University of Kentucky partnership, we did finalize that contract in December. So we have received July through December on that contract. And then I added the FTA CARES and CRISA money that's remaining, and we should be drawing all that down by the end of June, which would be 8.2 million.
Let me just ask you back on the income statement in terms of recognizing CARES. So you don't like reduce payroll expense, you just count that as income, the CARES money, rather than the fact that we're covering our payroll with, I'm just asking, maybe I'm asking the wrong question, I don't know.
No, I understand what you're saying. Actually, it still shows up in our expenses, and we keep it in the revenue line, and then at the end of the year, we will even out that money to reduce the wages and the fringe.
Okay, at the end of the year, we'll make that adjustment.
Yes.
Okay.
Okay. George and I had talked earlier in the week, and he wanted to see a cash flow that showed where we paid off the loan as just a example of what the year might look like. The loan is at 4.3 million right now, and this would be as if we paid off the loan in February. We would save approximately $282,000 in interest since we have 5 years left on the loan.
Yeah, I'm curious to get people's input on that. Obviously this whole thing changed when the CARES Act money was received, and prior to that, and everybody on this call knows that we were showing probably running out of cash in 5-year period or so, and now we're not, and so my thought is, should we get it behind us and save $280,000, or should we continue to pay it off as we originally intended? And then the further conversation beyond that, and we'll get into this in part 2. So that was part 1. Part 2 is on our capital reserve account and whatever reserve policy we want to create so that we can have a sustainable financial outlook for Lextran, pretty long into the future. So Rick and Jamie, I'm just curious what your thoughts are on paying off the debt since we have the means to do it.
Okay, so the extra money we got between CARES and CRISA, isn't it like $19 million, like 14 plus 5?
That's correct.
And we're ending our cash balance with 17. So like what typically, had we not gotten this money, what would our cash balance be, do you think? I see here 17 million.
That's with the debt paid off. So that's with
So what, yeah, so what did we eat it up with? The debt, and we bought some more vehicles, or?
That would be the paying off the loan of 4.3 million, and then the local match for the grants is 919,000.
Okay. So this 17 million, absent that, it would be more like 12 million, you think? It had, if everything was the same,
Yes.
about 12?
Yeah.
Okay.
I have a question, I think, for staff, or Nikki, or for Jill. For the strategic plan, are there any other items that are high priority? We really need new buses. We really need a new roof. Anything in your rank priority? Things pipeline.
I think at this point, one of the most important that we need will be the radio communication system that we talked about. And I think Fred talked a little bit about that last month. And I think that's one of the highest priorities besides, of course, buses. Unless Jill would like to add something else.
You said exactly, Nikki, two things I was going to say. We're going to say them in a different order. I was going to highlight, bus replacement, which we have talked about in every year's capital budget and in the strategic outlooks. We have to make sure that we are planning on an ongoing basis for bus replacement, that we're not waiting for a windfall, basically, from the federal government in terms of a grant. And then making sure we have a plan for replacing our CAD AVL and radio system, which is the onboard communications piece, but also, the automated dispatching, the vehicle location, that will age out as well, and we have to make sure that we're planning for that. So those would be my top two, and then also putting things aside for facility related expenses, and we will add on maintenance of the canopy once that is built as well.
so in the 2024 year, is that 3.5 million? Is that the communications?
No, that is the communications is in the 5307 money, the very first line.
Okay.
The 3.5 million is what we set back in the from the CARES grant for a capital project, is what they recommended to set back at least one capital project, and that would be to replace the AVL GPS system in the buses.
All right. So that's different than what you were talking about before.
Correct.
Okay.
Could you explain how those two are different?
Fred, you want to do that?
What Nikki, what Jill was talking about?
Yeah, I can. So the radio communication is the, if you think of police, fire, EMS, it's the same sort of dispatch to vehicle communication that you would have in real time. The CAD AVL system is you find that in those other emergency services as well, but this is a transit specific sort of data generator to where we can locate, we can plan, we can collect data about what we do. It gives dispatch transit specific tools that they can use to help make sure that we're highly efficient in our operations. So they work together, they're integrated together. Our current CAD AVL vendor will certainly be part of the radio project, and then when we get to the point that we need to look at our CAD AVL equipment, radio configuration and compatibility will be part of that as well. So they definitely work together. But there's different capital costs, there are different hardware needs. So they're similar, they work well together, but they are two separate sort of systems.
And we're still looking at about $1 million a year cash-wise after all this we get past this first year, right?
Yes, that will be the local. Are you speaking of the local match for the grants?
On a net cash flow, it looks like we're reducing our cash about $1 million a year.
Yes, that's the local match for the grants since the toll credits are gone.
Every year?
Yes. It's about A little over $1 million every year to match our 5307 grant.
Well, like when we look at these past cash flows, wasn't it more like $3 million a year it was draining, or how much was the debt payment?
The debt payment is right at $1 million a year.
Okay. Okay.
So Nikki and George, I guess there's two things I'm looking at. Love your advice here. And this goes hand in hand with the kind of cash reserve policy budgeting for future capital projects. I know that was something the finance committee said we wanted to look at what that policy is. So I guess wondering if we pay this off now, do we still have that cash to pay for future projects? And then that 1 million per year. So if I'm looking at this kind of to Rick's point, in 14 years, we won't have any total cash balance. If it continues today as it is kind of on this, is that how I would read that?
If this is perfectly accurate, that would be right.
That's if nothing changes, right? So, property taxes increase because of new development in Lexington. Because all we're doing, I think, on property taxes, we're taking last year and we're adding X% to it, right, for our projection.
Yes, we only did 1% for the next year because of the pandemic.
Yeah, and then so that doesn't, which is a good assumption. It doesn't assume any new development in Lexington, which I would suspect that there would be, but maybe we'll lose some things too. But
what about the other years besides the first year? What is the assumption on the property tax? More like 2%?
Yes, I raised it up to 2% for the other years.
Well, that could be.
We've been seeing 3.
We saw the last year we saw 3%. It was consistent between 1 and 2 for a while, and then 3, and then when David O'Neill came, of course that was pre-coronavirus. He had said 3, but then when this hit in March, then we went back to 1 for FY 2021.
Yeah.
So I'm assuming FY 2021 and 22 will probably be flat, and then I would expect that 23 through 25 would probably be back up to normal. This also doesn't take in consideration any additional grants that there might be. There may be other additional grants for low or no emissions grants for electric buses, or there could be additional CMAQ funds, but at this point we have no idea.
On the bus additions that you have each year, the 756,000, is that our match?
No, that is actually that's actually the 5339 bus and bus facilities grant. It's a formula fund that pays for 1 bus per year.
Okay.
Are you trying to account? I guess we're in the middle of negotiations for the union. Did you make an allowance for how much more you think that'll cost us?
Yes, we did add that in the 2021 budget.
How long's the contracts? 3 years?
3 years, yes.
Okay.
So how much of that did you allow so far in that 17.5 million? There's an increase in there?
There's an increase in the wages for a 3-year period, And then we also have the increase, of course, in benefits that come naturally, such as health insurance and things like that.
Okay, I guess I'm asking what percentage are you allowing it to go up in 2021 from?
And since you're in the middle of union negotiations, I don't know if you want to
That's why I was hesitant to since we're in negotiations for that increase. But I can let you know later.
Okay, but you think it's adequate?
I think so.
And adequate for paratransit growth? Yes, I guess so, right?
I think so. Paratransit it was growing. It was growing pretty steadily, and then this hit, and it's really changed things. It's amazing. I was looking back at what we did this time last or yeah, I guess about January of last year, and it's amazing how different things are right now.
Now,
We might want to check on Rick. I see a exclamation by his name that he's still there, but Rick, can you see us or hear us? We cannot see you.
Oh, you can't see me?
Mm-mm. I did hear you.
I can see me.
There you are. There you are. Usually when an exclamation pops up, it's somebody's having connection issues. So I wanted to make sure we didn't.
Okay, so just to answer George's question, how much more do we have to pay on the loan? Like 5 or 6 more years?
We have 5 years left.
Well, okay, so if we've got at least 14 years left, then I don't see any downside to paying off I mean, it all comes out in the wash, paying it off now, if we're going to save that interest.
Jamie, what do you think?
I know that's what George, I was going to ask I feel like Rick and I have given our opinions. I don't know if you've looked at this longer than we have.
Well, my opinion earlier on, so think pre-COVID, and when we were looking at these cash flow projections and they were showing that we would have zero money after the 5 years. Yeah, I just got to thinking that a way to force the hand of everybody to live within your means would be to pay it off. And then, your future budgets are going to reflect what money you actually have. And so, from that standpoint, I mean, that's not an issue anymore. Although, yeah, I guess in my personal finances, I like to have zero debt. And so it gives you the freedom to do what you want to do. You don't have that extra $1 million hanging over your head every year. And it gives you more choices. I mean, it does reduce how much money you have today, but it gives you more choices for the future. So that's just where I'm coming from. I would definitely support it.
Yeah.
But I'm open to it.
And then what I'm hearing from staff is with that $1 million today, are there any other big projects that we can't pay for that we have to pay by doing this? The two I heard were the bus replacements, which are budgeted, and the radios, which is currently budgeted, but there's nothing else that's unbudgeted that we wouldn't be able to pay for if we pay this loan off today. Is that
Did I hear you correctly? You wanted to know about projects that we might have that are unbudgeted?
Yes, if we paid this off today, and what I'm hearing you, that's $1 million additional a year. Are there any other projects that are unbudgeted that not in this budget that need to happen that would not be able to happen?
As you know, we have some improvements to our transit center that are happening and are budgeted. I think we would love to do a full blown, I don't necessarily mean take it down and build an all new transit center. So don't take that as what I'm saying, but a real, an even greater improvement to the back of house and passenger amenities than what we might see. Because we've not, I guess that's just a dream on paper. So, you know, we will be able to live, I think, with what we are doing for now, and that might, you know, might develop a future project that then we figure out how to pay for.
Well, I would look at the end of 8 years, our cash position will be the same, whether we pay it off or not, and we will have saved some interest expense.
Yeah.
And since I'm not hearing an overwhelming, there's something we can't pay for by making this early, I believe I'm supportive of it.
Okay. Let me ask this question to the staff. You know, I can bring this up at the board meeting and say that the finance committee, you know, had a discussion about it, and it's our recommendation that we pay off the debt in February. I mean, does anybody see any concerns with that?
I hope we don't have to put out an RFP.
I think we're okay, Rick.
My only concern is paying it off at this point before the pandemic is over. I think I would feel more comfortable waiting a few months, but it's up to, you know, it's up to the finance committee.
As long as the pandemic lasts, the more money we get. That's our problem, is can we keep this pandemic going?
I like your positivity, Rick. But no, you know, I think that it would be the recommendation of the finance committee, and I appreciate the questions asking for staff input and staff's staff feeling and staff opinion. I appreciate that, and I know I speak for Nikki as well in saying that. And so, you know, it would be the recommendation of the finance committee on this particular matter.
All right, so I would bring it up in new business.
I think it would probably fit new or old, because I do think we've talked about it before.
Okay. All right, I'll bring it up in old business. Nikki, you're going to be okay if we do it?
Yes, I think so.
Okay.
Yeah, that's my question, George. Is your motion going to be to do it now, or like Nikki said, to wait? I want to say a couple months, but
I think if Nikki is okay, I'd rather do it now. And I don't know. This is probably a biased comment, but it seems like sometimes at Lextran, when we let things go for a few months, it ends up going for a year, and I don't want that to happen. So I just soon take care of it and move forward. Unless, I mean, if Nikki, if you've got a compelling reason not to do that, my ears are open.
No, the only reason I hesitate is just because of, you know, I'm very conservative with the budget and things like grant money and property tax and fair revenue and things like that are kind of uncertain right now. So that's just the part that makes me nervous, but I'm okay with whatever the finance committee recommends.
And you do in the budget have pretty low number for the fair revenue this year. We're pretty close to $1 million before, right?
Yes, 1.3.
Yeah. So you've been pretty conservative across the whole 5 years, really. Okay, I'm going to offer that motion. I hope Jamie and Rick vote yes. And if you're not going to, tell me, and then I won't.
Yeah, I'll vote yes if
George?
it seems like staff is okay with it. I did hear a little bit of versus now versus in a couple months. But
Okay.
it seems like we're good with now, so.
Yep.
I think you have your motion and a second. So I believe as long as we have quorum, we'll probably be okay, George.
Okay. All right. The next thing, let's talk a little bit about a reserve policy. And you've got it down here as proposed agenda items. So what was the thought there that we would talk about it in the future?
Yes, I have several samples from the auditor. Jill has been able to pull some samples from some other transit agencies. So we were looking at some of those to put together sort of a draft to bring to the finance committee, possibly during the budget.
And
Which would be March.
once we receive things as well, we can share those, share some of those things with you too. We do still have a few asks out, floating on policies that we're expecting back. But in the interest of time, to be sure that to be sure we're able to get the next virtual meeting set up, we weren't sure if we would have time to talk about this in depth today, in terms of fund reserve. But we do know that is something that we as a committee have discussed, something Nikki and I have talked about many times in our years at Lextran, and we've also heard that recommendation from our auditor. So I think that will be a good focus for this group and for us in the next coming months.
Okay, let me go through a few things I want you to take a look at before we talk about it the next time. Jamie, Greg,
The reserve.
you can add to this. Yeah, this is for the capital reserve. One, as best you can, prepare a 10-year capital plan that shows how much money Lextran has to pay and how much grant money you would project that we might get for certain expenses, and try to cover everything you can think of. So roofs, driveways, major equipment changes on the building, the fleet replacement, try to get everything on there. And whatever that number comes out, that should be similar to what our target is of establishing whatever this fund is going to be. So we make sure that we start putting back money now to pay for, a really large expense 10 years from now. Another thing to look at, and I talked to Nikki about this morning, is, see how other transit agencies or maybe even other Lexington government authorities invest their long-term money. And, think about, is there a way to endow some of it? So maybe we restrict spending the principal and we only spend the earnings off of the principal. And so, and that's, that's an amount of money that we can build over time. And yeah, I guess the biggest thing in my mind is to understand, what grant money is going to come in for certain of the capital reserve expenses. And then one thing to look at with these plans that you've received from the other transit authorities is, are they capital reserve accounts or are they operating reserve accounts? Because some of the ones you've talked to me about sound like an operating reserve account. And, we probably need a little bit of both, but, we're looking at something more than, just having, 2 months revenue on hand. Mm-hmm. Because that just keeps you operating in the event that you have no income for two months.
What we have received, at least from my perspective, I've seen a mix of some operating, some capital, and so we will.
And this is more just an accounting question. Will this be a new line item, a new fund, or will this just be how much we want in the fund balance, in the total cash balance? Or is it a combination of both in the policy?
Probably a combination of both.
Yes.
Yeah, we should have a line item that says what it is. You know, how you keep the money is up to you, I think. But, you know, we have to think in terms of restricted, non-restricted also. Because,
Jamie, I shared with George yesterday that at least one of the policies that I have had shared with me, you know, sets a target number in terms of operating, and then states that, you know, at the end of the year, any surplus that is left should be directed towards a capital reserve. And then it was pretty prescriptive in how those dollars were kind of divvied out. Some kept restricted, some were unrestricted. Of the restricted dollars, some were for fleet, some were for facility. The agency that I am recalling was in Colorado, so they also had a trail system. So anything was specific to that agency, you know, it can be pretty prescriptive, or just, you know, set a target number. It would be how we chose to do that.
Well, the way we've set this thing, we're not going to have any reserves after the, I mean, any excess cash after the second year, right?
well, we're gonna need to figure out a way to do that.
Yeah, and it would seem to me if we can restrict it, we can unrestrict it.
Exactly.
I don't know what it means to restrict something, since you can undo it anyway.
It will give future boards the intent of what we had for the money. But yeah, they can unrestrict it if they want to.
Yeah. To me, I would just simply, I don't know, it seems like, you know, driveway resealing and HVAC replacement is kind of something that comes out of operating, you know, your regular operating budget. But I do think we should reserve some money for roof replacement. That's a big one.
Yeah.
And I'd put that money in an investment account.
Yeah.
And then if we are planning on, do we need an investment policy?
Yeah, we would.
Well, I mean, we have an investment policy for the pension plan that seems to be working pretty well. I mean, if we're willing to put money in the, you know, retirement plan, you know, why not manage it the exact same way?
Lextran does have an investment policy that was written several years ago. It would probably need to be updated, but we do have one.
George, were there any other items that you wanted us to be mindful of or take a look at?
That's all I can think of now.
Okay. All right.
So with that, unless anybody has anything else to add, we can have a motion to adjourn. Or we can just adjourn.
Yeah.
Jamie made it, Rick seconded it, and I said yes.
Okay.
All right, so we'll see everybody in a couple minutes.
Bye.
2 moments. Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye.